In the modern era of Star Wars, Mandalorians are known for their bounty hunting skills above all else. And so, whether you're one of the top spice trading gangsters in hub space or the monarch of some utopian world, retaining Mandalorian bounty hunters was not only seen as a status symbol or symbol of affluence, it was also a very practical solution to most of your security needs. They were simply at the top of their profession.
Individuals for hire. The price is high, but we are very good at what we do.
But the thing is, the bounty hunting profession is less than honorable. You're essentially just hiring yourself out to the highest bidder. Now, sure, some bounty hunters are more honorable or, more loyal than others, but it's still kind of a demeaning line of work for one of the most potent warrior groups in galactic history.
I can bring you in warm, or I can bring you in cold.
Yeah, good luck making it to the standard galactic retirement age doing a job like that. The truth is, the Mandalorians we see now are just a shadow of what their great civilization once was. These are refugees, outcasts, the Mandalorian diaspora, and long before they became lowly bounty hunters fighting other people's battles. They used to go on grand crusades across the galaxy. They tore down great civilizations, genocided others. They defeated alien species so brutally and completely that within a few generations, they lost their sentience. And the first Mandalorians, well, they learned to defeat and tame great beasts like the mythosaur. In those days, the Mandalorians didn't fight for coin, they fought for the thrill of the hunt. They wanted to dominate the most powerful and dangerous creatures that they could find in the galaxy. This tradition of fighting dangerous beasts and fighting them is one of the oldest Mandalorian customs out there, and it's been long forgotten until everyone's favorite Mando dad Djarin came onto the scene. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at fantastic beasts and where Djarin fought them. The outer rim planet of Pagadon was completely covered in ice and snow and seemed to have an extremely barren surface. It was an Arctic desert biome. But below the surface, the waters were teeming with carnivorous predators.
You know what he's looking for? You're looking for Ravenak, right? It's clear right now!
The fearsome Ravenak was part fish, part walrus, part hippo, and crocodile. They were apex predators and had learned how to listen through the ice for vehicles, ships, any sign of life basically, that it could get its massive jaws on. When Djarin was trying to extract a Mithril accountant wanted by Grief Karga for theft, a Ravenak hones in on their position shortly after their transport arrives right beside Djarin's ship, the Razor Crest. The Ravenak is powerful enough to break through the ice and bites down onto one of the landing struts on Djarin's ship with its massive jaw. The weight of the animal is heavy enough to keep the Razor Crest from climbing up into the air, but luckily Djarin is equipped with a jumbo-sized cattle prod and manages to shock the Ravenak hard enough so that it lets go. Some animal species in the Star Wars galaxy are so hardy and useful and tasty that they've been exported to multiple planetary systems. Such was the case with the Blurg. These bipedal reptiles were favored as mounts by nerf herders, homesteaders, and even rebel fighters. They were extremely strong and could carry a heavy load and traveled at fast enough speeds to even outtake some repulsor lift-powered vehicles. The Blurgs were naturally vicious animals and consumed basically anything you could throw into their mouths. This made the Blurg great at agricultural jobs. You could clear a field of weeds with these pretty easily. They could even cut the grass. When Blurgs mate, by the way, the female Blurg actually eats the male Blurg after they're finished. That's how ruthless and vicious these things are. Now, when Djarin traveled to Arvala 7 for a bounty job, he gets attacked by several Blurgs right after he lands. Luckily for him, he was wearing armor, and these were tame Blurgs. Still, Djarin struggles to fight off these big hulking beasts. Once they get within, knife fighting range, it's extremely hard to take one of these things down. Luckily for him, the owner of these Blurgs, an Ugnaught farmer named Quill, takes out the Blurgs with a stun dart. Eventually, Djarin even learns how to properly approach one of these temperamental beasts and gets to ride one. Like the Blurg, the Jawas have also been exported to other planets like Arvala 7, which is kind of a bad thing because, whenever Jawas move to a place, ships start appearing on cinder blocks with their engines removed. It's not a specious thing to say, it's just their culture, you know? To make matters worse, when these little bastards find and strip the Razor Crest clean, they refuse to return the parts to Djarin unless he gets them one of their favorite delicacies, the egg of a Mudhorn. What is a Mudhorn? Well, it's this freaking thing. They're essentially muddy rhinos covered in fur. Incredibly strong and hard to kill. Basic small arms, fire doesn't seem to do much against its skin at all. Luckily, Djarin does have little baby Gogur at his side when he's fighting the Mudhorn, and it turns out this little guy is quite powerful and manages to lift the Mudhorn into the air, giving Djarin the opportunity to deliver a killing blow to its eye with a vibroblade. This father and son animal poaching incident would become forever immortalized by Djarin's new clan sigil, which would be crafted by the armorer shortly after. And the Jawas, like the degenerates they are, get to drink baby Mudhorn soup. Everyone wins, except for the Mudhorn. It's very sad for the Mudhorn. Now later on, Djarin returns to Navarro because Greef Karga wants him to take out the Imperial client. Djarin's posse must take the ground approach to the settlement in order to avoid detection. It's a long trip by foot and Blurg, and so the group must break camp in the Navarro wastelands, which is always a terrible idea. And that's because this area was home to the very dangerous Navarro Reptavian. This flying reptile had a wingspan of 11.44 meters wide and a mouthful of razor-sharp teeth. They were primarily nocturnal hunters and masters at stalking prey using the darkness of night for cover. As adults, Reptavians were large and strong enough to lift a full-grown Blurg into the air. When these flying reptiles descended on Djarin and company, there was hardly any warning, and even though the beasts were eventually driven back, Greef Karga is slashed by one of the animal's venomous claws. The venom from this injury was extremely deadly, and the only way you can really recover is have the anti-venom for it. Luckily, baby Gogur is there to save the day and uses his force healing abilities to extract the poison.
He's trying to eat me!
That might be the hallucinations caused by the venom. Now, people have always drawn connections between George Lucas's Tatooine and Frank Herbert's Arrakis. Visually speaking, these are very similar looking worlds. There's sand, of course, which appears in both series, and I guess the Freemen are kind of like the Tusken Raiders. They are kind of similar in that both have to adapt to live in the harsh conditions of the sand seas. So what exactly then is Star Wars' version of a sandworm? Well, I think it's the Krayt Dragon. Now, I've always imagined the Krayt Dragon as more of a, well, lizard, and so did legendary Star Wars concept artist Ralph McQuarrie. But when Djarin teams up with a group of Tatooine settlers and Tusken Raiders to take out an especially aggressive Krayt Dragon that had been, basically preying on their livestock, what we see is something so large that it's hardly even able to emerge completely out of the sand. All we really see of this massive animal is its head, and that's apparently because there are two species of this beast, the Cannon Krayt, which is far smaller and more common, and then there's the greater Krayts that live in the dunes. In Tusken Raider culture, a Tusken doesn't become an adult until they kill a Krayt Dragon. I'm starting to believe that most likely means a juvenile Krayt Dragon, a Canyon Dragon, and not the one Djarin has to face. Now, according to skeletons found of the beast, the Krayt Dragon had around 16 different limbs and could grow up to several hundred meters long. As an apex predator, they can defeat almost anything on the planet, and they're able to even spit out acidic venom that literally dissolves organic tissue on contact. Krayt Dragons are actually one of the only creatures that hunt Sarlaccs, and I imagine that is an epic battle when it does happen. How do you defeat large beasts such as this? Well, it usually takes a weapon that can be mounted on a starship in the ideal situation. A Krayt Dragon's skin is all but impervious to small arms fire, and so when Djarin fights one, he must actually fly inside the beast with a satchel of explosives in order to kill it. And what do the victors end up with? Well, the greatest prize in Tusken culture, a Krayt Dragon Pearl. There's also a lot of meat. A lot of Krayt Dragon meat. I mean, for me, this is where Star Wars always shines. As a person who oftentimes gets hungry at zoos looking at animals, it was so cool to learn about the fascinating Krayt Dragon, seeing it in action, and then finally watching Pelimoto take that delicious slab of meat and grill it over an open fire. There's so much we can learn about the animal kingdom in today's world, especially with all of this information on the internet. But can you truly understand something without actually putting it in your stomach first? I think not. During one mission, Djarin and Gogur are running low on cash. They probably could have robbed the bank. I mean, Djarin has a lot of firepower. Gogur has the Force. It's a pretty good, pairing. But instead, they end up transporting a talking frog lady and her delicious eggs on a very perilous subspace journey to the sanctuary moon of Trask. While en route, the Razor Crest runs into some pesky space police, and Djarin ends up booking it to the planet of Maldoror. It's not really easy running away from two starfighters, especially if they're X-Wings, and Djarin, of course, ends up crash landing onto the planet. Now, baby Gogur at this point is in what you would call the put things in my mouth and eat them phase. Consequently, this leads to baby Gogur eating several of the frog lady's eggs, or, future children. And while Papa Din is repairing the ship, the little guy starts sampling some of the native polyps that are, growing in the cave that they're sheltering in. Clearly, baby Gogur has never seen the Alien series because all of the polyps around him begin to hatch, and suddenly he's surrounded by a bunch of knobby white spiders. Interesting fact, the knobby white spiders were first found on Dagobah by explorers. They eventually died because Dagobah is a hellhole. And we find out that the white knobby spider is actually part of a gnarled tree's life cycle. It's sort of like a mobile root that walks around devouring animals until it gets large enough to plant itself into the soil. The more you know, the less you want to go outside. Anyway, these are still spiders in my book, and as a general rule for a healthy and prosperous life, once spiders get larger than palm size, you have to start blasting. The problem in Djarin's case is he stumbled on a hive of spiders, and many of them are larger than even his ship. Absolutely terrifying. The Mandalorian uses most of his arsenal to escape, but luckily for him, those two space cops, including creator Dave Filoni himself, show up and save the day. The children of the Watch are all about teaching their kids the way. And in today's world where parents have to work multiple jobs just to survive and, feed and clothe their children, it's kind of nice seeing the family community aspect of the children of the Watch. I love how these fundamentalists place so much effort on their future generations, although for some reason their children keep getting caught in dangerous situations. Like when this gigantic crocodile turtle thing almost kills Paz Vizsla's son, or when this giant raptor beast comes out of nowhere and then snatches him only a few episodes later. The Mandalorians back in the day, they would have cleared the entire area around their base, so this kind of stuff wouldn't happen. Anyway, this beast, known as the Raptor, is so fast that not even Mandalorians with their jetpacks can follow it through the air. Luckily, Lady Bo-Katan Kryze has her gauntlet with her, and they track the beast down to her nest, where he's about to feed Paz Vizsla's younglings to her own. This Raptor belongs in the category of Reptavians, or what essentially is a flying dinosaur. These are not large birds of prey with their hollow bones and feathers. This thing is mean, thick, tough, and very armored. Luckily, the Mandalorians are well coordinated and they manage to tie one of its wings together, sending it crashing to the water down below, where it becomes food for the crocodile turtle monster we talked about earlier. The circle of life. Yeah, yeah. One of the most badass moments in The Mandalorian is when those Left Behind Mandos appear on their longskip, which is clearly the creators paying homage to the longships used by the Vikings. Now, there's always been a lot of debate amongst fans about who these Mandalorians were inspired by, and many have said that due to the Nordic complexion of the Mandalorians in the Clone Wars series and their warrior-like ways, that these are supposed to actually be Vikings. But shortly into the Mandalorian's journey in that longskip, a mountain of rocks literally explodes next to them, revealing a Trinotaur, which, let's be honest, is a freaking kaiju, which is one point for the theory that the Mandalorians are actually inspired by the Japanese samurai culture. Either way, this Trinotaur is terrifying, and we don't have much information about it at all, and the Mandalorians literally run away from it, and who can blame them? It's always better to regroup and limit your casualties. Plus, the Mandalorians are clearly going to come back with a Star Cruiser and just bombard that thing from orbit. The appearance of this fearsome beast does a great job at showing us just how terrible the planet of Mandalore truly was. So there you have it, guys. That is the whole repertoire of animals that Djarin fought in his, 3-season journey. I think it's important here to remember, guys, that, we should be kind to animals. We shouldn't be cruel or torture them. A person who does that is clearly a sick individual. But at the same time, don't humanize animals and monsters. That's the best way to get eaten. Well, I hope you enjoyed today's episode, guys. Don't forget to subscribe, hit that notification button down below so you don't miss out on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy.